In the name of God, the merciful, the loving. Peace upon you all. Today, I want to share my understanding of what is Salah according to the Quran. Now, I'm not going to go through every verse to explain my position because there are multiple articles and videos that explains what is Salah according to the Quran. Now, I'm in the camp of that. In the camp of that Salah does not mean ritual prayer, but it means turning toward God, right? And the verse that we usually use is chapter 71, verse 31 to 32. Sorry, 75. Chapter 75, verse 31 to 32. 75, 31 to 32, right? فلا صدق ولا صلى ولكن كذب وتولى, right? So he denied and turned away, and the opposite of deny, or كذب means to lie actually, and the opposite is of lying is to tell the truth, and the opposite of turning away is salah, which means to turn toward. Now that's my understanding. So in this video, I'm gonna show a few a few refutation against the salah meaning turning toward. So the first one is these two verses, chapter 3 verse 39 and chapter 33 verse 43, where it says the angels the angels called upon Hoa. So the who here is Zechariah, right? If you read chapter 3 verse 38, you'll know the context is about Zechariah, and here it says وهو قائم يصلي في المحراب, right? So here the يصلي is verb. It's in a verb form, right? In chapter 33 verse 43, هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته, right? Again, this is in a verb form, right? And the Huwa here is God, Allah, right? So you have two different entities doing salah. You have one doing salah on God and God doing salah on humans. Well, right? Alaykum here is the mu'mins. Mu'min. Okay, you get the point, right? So that being said, if we're going to be consistent with the definition, we can't say, okay, here Zechariah is praying, but when it comes to God, it's blessing, right? We can't say that because there is an Arabic word for blessing, and that is barakah, and it's used many times in the Quran, actually. I'll show you blessings. Here are the verses, barakat, barakah. See, different verb forms, a noun and passive particular and adjective, right? It takes a lot of different form, and yet the translation is consistent. It never changes. It's always blessed, right? And this is what I like to see. But for some reason, when it comes to salah, they keep changing the definition. So if we say, Zechariah yusalli, he's turning toward God, and God turns toward the mu'mins, it makes sense. It's not a logical fallacy, right? It works. It's good. But to keep changing the definition of salah to suit your understanding, right? I think it's just not consistent. That being said, the next point I want to say is now some people will refute this and say, well, the Salat is never used for God, right? It's always used for human. Alif Lam Salat. And for some reason it's special, it's specific, it's something different than the verb form yusalli. Now, okay, I disagree with that for two reasons. The first reason, uh, the first reason, if we say, in English, if we say he makes, right? He makes or not the claim, right? Another way to say this sentence is he claims, right? He claims. So you see what I did here? Claim makes is the verb. Right. Yep. Sorry. Makes here is the verb. Claim is the noun or the claim. Okay. So this is a noun. This is a verb. And in the second sentence, I just change the noun into a verb. And this is what happens in verses like وَيَكِمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ, right? When God says يَكِمُون الصَّلَاةِ, because الصَّلَاةِ here is a noun. So in order for you to, act on this noun, you need a verb, and this is a verb, right? So in order, if you want to make this into one word, instead of saying يَكِمُون الصَّلَاةِ, you can say humma yusallun, right? Bismillah. So let's say like humma. How do I spell that? Humma. Okay. Or yeah, this is good. Humma y. Okay. Wait. Yeah. The y here is the verb, right? And then you sol. Whoops. This might take a while. Okay. You sol loon, right? So instead of saying humma yakimun as-salat, right? This is a noun. This is a noun. This is the verb. I made these two words into one word by attaching a prefix to salah, right? The yeah here, and that makes a whole verb. This makes this noun becomes a verb, right? And we have that in English, right? You can say the teacher is a noun, but you can change the teacher into a verb by saying teaching or teaches, right? So there's nothing. My point is there is nothing special about the alif lam salat. That's my first reason, and it doesn't mean, what I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make here is the verb form of salah does not make it any different from the noun form of as-salah, right? It's just a different form. The meaning still stands. You can't just say, well, God never does al-salat. Well, no, he does do salah, right? You can't say, well, God never uses for himself the teacher, so, or that teach, right? Or the love. So, but God, if God does love, if he is loving, right, then you can say God is the love, or you can put the love in a noun form for God, or give that attribution for God, because he function it, like he can act on it, right? Now, my second point for this is there are many words that shows up with this style where it's alif lam, right? Too much red. Okay, whoops. It's alif lam and it's singular, right? This is singular. So here the singular plus alif lam, right? This is the, what do you call it, the equation of this certain word, and we can see that in many verses. So for example, this is a refutation. If you say al-salat is something specific, then what about where are my examples? Okay, chapter 5 verse 13, right? Chapter 5 verse 13. Here it says يحرفون الكلم. See right here, al-kalam. Okay, kalam here is singular. This is singular, and then you get the alif lam, right? So the same style, singular plus alif lam. Now, if we're gonna go by the reasoning that al-salat is specific ritual prayer, then please could you tell us the specific word that the Jews in this context is talking about the Jews, yahrafun, distort. So the specific word that the Jews were distorting from its context, maw'adaha, right? Can you show me in this context which word the Jews were distorting which specific one word? Of course you can't, right? And by the way, I know the translation says words. Okay, this is wrong. It's actually the plural form of kalam is kalimat, which is used here. Uh, Kalimat. Okay, so if God wanted to use the plural form of kalim, it's kalimat. It's right there. It's used many times, right? So my point here is alif lam makes it a general thing, right? So if I made a category and I said this category is words, like it's word, you know, you can have Allah, mercy, love, like male, female, girl, boy. All of these are just words, right? And you can put these words in a set. So in my understanding, that's what alif lam and singular mean in the Quran. Also, another example is chapter 24. Chapter 24, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, verse 31. So here it says, I have to find it, al-tifl, right? Al-tifl. So again, alif lam, right? And singular. It's singular. So same style, singular plus alif lam. Is this a specific child God speaking about in this context, right? So the context is about what the believing women, they should wear and lower their gaze. What they should cover and to lower their gaze, and in which they have some men that they can relax their dress in front of, right? And one of them is children who are not aware of the private aspects of women. Children who are not aware of the private aspect of women, right? So again, if God wanted to say al-atfal, which is the plural form of al-tifl is al-atfal, and it's used in the Quran before, not before, it is used in the Quran here, chapter 24, verse 59, al-atfal, right? If God wanted to use a plural form, he could have done so. But the point I'm trying to make here is al-tifl does not mean one specific child, just like al-salat or a-salut, right? This is the correct pronunciation is al-salut, because the dagger alif never existed in the oldest Quran. So I try not to say it, but whatever. So again, so these are my 2 points of why al-salat cannot mean, you cannot keep changing the definition of the word, and alif lam does not make it special. Okay, I give you 2 examples now. There are many examples in the Quran, like you got al-falaq, the ship, right? God says, chapter 14, verse 32. Okay, he's the one who subjected for you the ships. Okay, now they make it plural here, but it's not plural. Again, they're doing this because they lack understanding. But if we go by the style alif lam, okay, and it's singular, okay, then is this a specific ship is God talking about that he subjected under us, or a category of ships, right? And then you got a boat, a ship, I don't know, all those ships, right? Anything that floats on water is a ship by definition. Okay, this is what God is trying to hint on. I mean, this is the style. This is how God uses the style. It's not one specific ship, because if it is one specific ship, then according to this context, which ship is he talking about? Right? You cannot define that. Allah, it is God who created the heaven and the earth and sent down rain from the sky and produced thereby some fruits and provision for you. This is a general statement, right? It's nothing specific in there. So this is why, these are the 2 refutation a lot of people try to use against or try to use to support that Salah is ritual prayer, right? The first one, yusalli is not the same form as al-salat. No, that just because one is in a verb form and one is a noun does not mean it loses its value or it changes the definition, right? Yusalli is equal, okay, yusalli, right? Like I explained before, yusalli, this is the verb and this is the noun, or this is the root word, right? And this prefix makes it a verb. Too much red. And now there is no blue. Right? So, did you get that? Right? And this is same as saying yakimun as-salah, right? Yakimun, yakimun al-salat, right? Because here or as-salut, here al-salut becomes a noun, so you need a verb, right? A verb. So right. So these are my two reasons why, al-salah and yusalli are not different. They're the same word, right? And two is al-salat is not special. If it is special, like it's something specific and defined, then please define al-tifl, al-falq, al-tir, al-ithm, al-kalam, al-husna, al-bahr. God says there are 7 seas, right? But then every time we just read this verse actually, في البحر, there you go, it's in here. See, is this one specific sea God's talking about? Alif Lam Bahr, right? Because there is a plural form of Bahr God uses. He uses al-Bahrain, okay, 2 seas, al-Bahr, or al-Bihar. Yes, there you go. Or I hope there is, yeah, وإذا البحار فرجت, right? And if the seas erupted. So there is a plural form of bahr, right? So the point is the singular form. So if the point is, if this is a specific sea, then please define it, because there is in the Quran, God says, if all the 7 seas turned into ink, so there is 7 seas on earth, right? So which specific bahr God is talking about in this verse? You cannot define it, right? Okay, now my third point is yakimun as-salah or akam as-salah does not mean stand up during prayer, right? Because a lot of people say, oh, there is sujood, ruku' and qiyam, right? If that is the case, there are verses where God says, establish the deen, akim al-deen, the religion, or it depends on how you define it. Anyway, it's in chapter 42, verse 13. 42, verse 13. Here it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ibrahim, wa akimu al-deen. Okay, why is it blue? I like red. Okay, wa akimu al-deen. Akimu here, akimu wa al-deen, right? It doesn't mean stand on top of the deen, or stand up when you are stand up when you are, in the deen, or when you are making the deen. Does it say that? No. It means to establish the deen. And this is the correct translation. Establish the deen, right? So you're not going to stand up on top, or stand up while you are on the deen, or stand up on your feet, or you're standing on top of the deen, right? It cannot mean physical here, right? It has to mean establish. The other one is chapter 55, verse 9, where it says, وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط. Yep. So again, it's not every time you wait you're gonna have to stand up, right? You're not gonna stand on your feet when you're waiting in just, right? You're not gonna do that. Like, okay, every time, if you go to court, the judge is sitting down, right? You're gonna say, hey, the verse says you have to be on your feet. And if you're gonna, wait in justice, okay, maybe that was bad. Not the court. The person in the store, right? If he's sitting down and he's whatever giving you the change, you're not gonna say, hey, you have to stand up while you're doing that, because the Quran says you have to be on your feet, right? And obviously the Sunnis don't even translate it that way. They say it's establish, right? So akimu as-salat does not mean to stand up during prayer, right? Otherwise, you have to stand up when you are on the deen, and stand up when you are, what do you call, doing the wazn, wearing in just, or the third example is in chapter 65 verse 2, where it says وَأَكِيمُوا الشَّهَادَةِ. So every time you bear witness, you have to be on your feet. No, it says establish the witness. Okay, establish the testimony, right? Or establish the witness, right? And again, this is a good example. Al-shahadat. Again, you see here, same style. Singular plus alif lam, right? Is this one specific witness or testimony that God defined in this verse? No. I mean, you can. This is a general statement, right? And when they have fulfilled their terms, either retrain according to the acceptable term, and bring two witnesses among them, and establish the testimony to Allah. Okay, so here al-shahada is not one specific. I mean, okay, in this context, you could say, well, yes, it is specific because I think it has to deal with divorce, right? Yeah, but it's not a specific shahada. It's just that the concept of shahada, the witness, right? And whatever you bear witness to, you can put it in that category, right? So, again, so akimu is not physical here, right? It means to establish. So if you're gonna say, oh, salah requires you to be on your feet, that's not correct. It means to establish your salah. Now, a lot of people who believe in ritual prayer kind of struggle to see that. Like, yeah, okay, akimu ash-shahada, yes, we get it. We don't have to do the shahada while we are standing up, right? But when it comes to salah, it's like they switch into standing up, they switch to physical, because that is the Sunni understanding, the traditional understanding. And the Christians and the Jews also did it, so they believe it's for some reason it must be that, right? Like, but they have to have an open mind and be receptive to these verses, right? They cannot just ignore it, you just turn a blind eye, and they cannot say, well, the word has multiple meanings, yeah, like it could mean this, it could mean that. Well, listen, we can give it one meaning and it's consistent throughout the Quran, and I think establish is the best meaning. Like, I think 100% of the time it works. Maybe one or two times it might say, it might be physical according to the context, but I think 100% of the time akimu, especially the word akimu, right, or akum, it's to establish, right? That being said, the next two physical positions, ruku' and sujud. Okay, for ruku', chapter 5, verse 55, right? It shows that it cannot be physical, because here it says, and those who have believed, those who establish salah, give zakah, and they bow. Okay, so mistranslation, but if you look at the grammar, okay, so yakimun, yatun, those two are verbs, right? We're not gonna debate that. Those two are verbs. Al-salat and al-zakat is nouns, right? Now, when it comes to the ruku'ah, it's not a verb or a noun, it's an adjective, right? This is an adjective. Okay, so God is saying, you're doing these two things while you are in ruku'ah. So now, whatever your understanding of zakah is, whether it's 2.5% charity, which is not in the Quran, or it means to purify, or any other meanings. Okay, so when you are giving the zakah, you have to do it while you're bowing, right? Or when you are doing the salah, you're doing it while you're bowing. Well, okay, so if you are doing salah, right, the ritual prayer, it does encompass bowing. But so then why did God repeat here? Like, why did God say you have to, like, you're already doing it in salah, so why here? What does this mean, right? So the only way out of this is ruku' is a mental state, right? And it means to yield or to be receptive. Now, for me, I say it means to receptive. It means to be receptive. You allow information to come in. You have an open mind. You're curious, right? You're not closed-minded, and you just think, okay, you figure out what is the deen, and that's it. Close your mind, zip. No, it means to be receptive. Another verse, chapter 48, uh, chapter 48, verse 29. Chapter 48, verse 29. Here it says, تراهم, okay, uh, تراهم, right? You see them, ركوع sujuda, okay? Raka sajda. So here raka is a noun, okay? So you see them in this raka, and sujda is an adjective, okay? So how do people who believe it's physical deal with this? How do you see, okay, you see them, this is something you see, ruka sujda, right? How are you doing bowing, prostrating at the same time? It's physically impossible. Now some people say, oh, there is like an intermediate position where you're not bowing, or okay, if you're on your knees, okay, that's ruku'ah, and then the sujud is like the head is on the ground. Well, I forgot how the position is, but I don't know how this works out physically, right? It's hard for me to explain it, but some people say, oh, it's ruku'ah and sujud, bowing and prostrating, like the translation say over here. But the wow is not in the middle. They added that. Okay, so it's mistranslation. In my understanding, these are two things that are happening at the same time. Now, if you are submissive and receptive and receptive, it works, right? Simultaneously, it works. You can be submissive and receptive at the same time. No problem with that. But if it's physical, then you're gonna have a problem explaining this, right? You're gonna be forced to put a wow but it doesn't exist. And okay, so another two verses actually that supports this conclusion is chapter 19, verse 51. Chapter 19, verse 51. Here it says Rasulan Nabiyan, right? Rasul, okay, Rasula Nabiya. Let me double check here. Okay, وكان رسولا نبيا. Okay, so here it doesn't say wow, we nabiya. But here the translation kind of they add the end for some reason. Now so the end shouldn't be here. Now, can someone be a messenger prophet? Of course, simultaneously, at the same time, you can be a messenger and a prophet. Heck, you can also be messenger, prophet, a husband, a father, and a son. All those five things at the same time. There's no problem, right? But if these two are physical, then it's gonna be a problem, right? Like imagine a circle and a rectangle at the same time. It's what? So the third the second example, it's chapter 9, verse 128, right? Right, and this is where like the submitters, the people who believe in 19 rejected, Ra'uf Rahim, right? He kind, merciful. There is no and again, right? So you can be Ra'uf Rahim simultaneously at the same time, right? But if these two were physical, then it's gonna be weird. Like I mean, you can say you can walk and raise your hand at the same time, right? That's if it's physical. But there are you cannot do bowing, prostrating at the same time. One of them, if it's simultaneously, if these two are simultaneously, then it must be a mental state. They are submissive and receptive, right? Now, a lot of people will say, well, being a Muslim is to submit to God, right? Like أسلمت لرب العالمين. I submit to God. No. Uh, Aslam does not mean to submit. It means to be at peace, because the word comes from salam. Like salam alaikum, peace upon you, right? Muslim, Islam, salam, right? All those three words, yes, they take different form, but the meaning, peace, still exists, right? It's kind of like Christ, Christianity, Christian, Christina, right? All different form, but they are centralized around the concept of Christ. The word meaning doesn't change. It's just different. The different forms are just to describe different entities or different, sets, whatever you want to call that. Yeah, just to say or different, yeah, entities. So Christ, Christina, Christian, Christianity, right? They're centralized around the concept of Christ. Same with Islam, Muslim, Salam. These are centralized around the concept of peace. So when you say, peace upon you, salam alaikum, you don't say submission upon you, you say peace upon you, right? So when you say aslamtu rabbil alameen, I am at peace with the Lord of the universe, or whatever you want to translate rabbil alameen is, because I have a different translation of this word phrase. My Oh, what else did I want to say? All right. So, sujood is submission, right? Mental submission. And ruku'ah is to be receptive, right? It's not physical, and it works with every verse. It's consistent. There's no problem. But if you're gonna say sujood is physical, then you have a problem with chapter 2 verse 58, where they say enter the gate sujudan. So God is telling them to enter the gate while they are in sujood, right? Sujuda is an adjective, right? I believe sujuda is an adjective. Oh, it's a noun. Okay, I'm sorry. Sujudan sounded like an adjective. With khulu, okay, that's the verb. Albab sujuda. Okay, so how does someone enter the gate sujuda, right? It has to be a mental submission. It cannot be a physical prostration. And here, they say bowing humbly. Well, the word humble is not there, but they understood, and it's not even bowing, prostrating, right? It's supposed to be prostrating if they are consistent. But here now, their sujood becomes ruku'ah. Lol. So you see, this is a mistranslation, to force their understanding, right? They're not being genuine. They're not being, honest when they're translating the verses. Okay, so another refutation is the timing of Salah. In chapter 4, verse 103. Okay, so chapter 4, verse 103, where it talks about the ritual prayer, or the Salah, has decreed upon the mu'mins a decree of specified times, right? Now, if we look at the Quran and look at the specified times that are mentioned, you'll see that, okay, one, they're talking to Muhammad, right? Akim as-salah, right? Akim is singular, but some people say, well, if God talks to Muhammad, he's also talking to us, and this verse shows that the salah is decreed upon the mu'min specified times, right? So the thing is, okay, now I agree, 100% I agree with that, but I don't believe it's in a sense of ritual prayer. Now, for one reason, the first one is what was the chapter? Chapter 33, verse 43. Was that it? And remember, no, it wasn't this one. It was okay. Let me see. Prayer, Salat, and chapter. Okay. هو الذي okay هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور, right? So God is turning toward us to ليخرجكم, what's the word here? Brings you out of darkness. Okay, good. From the darkness to the light, right? Now, how does God does that, right? If you look at chapter 5, verse 13. No, wait, I gotta pull it up. Give me 1 second. Here you go. Chapter 5, verse, actually, it should be verse 15 and 16. Right? O people of the scripture, there has come to you our messenger, making clear to you much of what you used to conceal of the scripture and overlooking much. There has come to you from God a light and a clear book, right? uh, جاءكم من الله نور وكتاب مبين. Now look at this, by which God guides those who pursue His pleasure, radwa, okay, to the way of peace, and brings them out of the darkness into the light. So you see that this is how God brings us out from the darkness into the light, by the Quran, by the book that was sent down, right? So the Prophet Muhammad's job was to recite the Quran to the mu'mins around him, right? As shown in chapter 9, verse 103. It says here, and take their wealth. Okay, this is where they also change the translation of Salah to invocation, but it doesn't mean invocation, right? خذ من أموالهم ترارا. Okay. وصل عليهم, right? And do ritual prayer upon them? No, it doesn't mean to do ritual prayer upon them, right? It means to turn toward them by using the book, the Quran, right? As we seen in chapter 5, verse 15 to 16, because that's the only way they will come out from darkness into the light. إن صلواتك سكن لهم, right? Your salawat, the salawat, plural form, on whom, the whom here, it's not the mu'mins actually, it's the Bedouins. If you go a little bit back, وَمِنَ الْأَعْرَابِ مَنْ يُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ, right? Those who are, okay, so the Bedouins who are mu'mins. So this is the context, right? So now you have a human doing salawat on another human, right? إن صلواتك سكن لهم, right? And also in is it okay, this is actually the verse I needed. In this verse it also says وصلوات الرسول إلا إنها قربة لهم. سيد okay, so وصلوات الرسول, the salawat of Rasul, إلا إنها قربة لهم, it's but nearness to them. Now for some reason here they put a period, right, and then they start a new sentence. I don't know, it is a means of nearness to them. Okay, I don't know why they would separate these two, the salah of the messenger, and separate that. I don't know why they would separate these two, right? They're together. At least that's how I read it. So obviously, the point is, Muhammad does salawat on the mu'mins, right? At specific times, right? And that salah is by reciting the Quran. The only way he's gonna bring them, or how God brings the mu'mins out from the darkness into the light, is by sending a messenger reciting the Quran to them, using that book, right? This is how Muhammad, or how God using Muhammad as an instrument to take the believers out of the darkness into the light. Now, my second point is in chapter 17, verse 78, where the timing of the Salah is mentioned. The timing of Salah is mentioned. If we read it, now, I'm gonna, I don't think lots of pro-ritual followers believe, the way they read it is a little bit, it's not consistent, okay? Because what I want to point out is here in chapter 2, verse 187, it's talking about Siyam, right? And here it says, وَأَتِمُّ الصِّيَامِ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ, right? So God here says complete the siyam to the layl. So it looks like, now there is a lot of Quran alone followers who say, hey, we're supposed to break our fast at night, not the Maghrib, right? Not duluk al-shams. This is al-Maghrib in the Quran, duluk al-shams, the decline of the sun, right? So, those Quran alone followers who, spend extra 40 to 30 minutes doing their fasting, right? Because the Sunnis break their siyam in Maghrib, not the layl, not the night. Now, some people might, try to play with that word, but if we're gonna be consistent, al-layl is the night, right? So you're gonna break your fasting at night, not at Maghrib. I don't know why the Sunnis say it's Maghrib. Maybe the Hadith or maybe it's their tradition, but they are not following the commands of God. And for the Quran alone people who believe they have to break their Siyam at Layl, props for them. They're being consistent. They're following the command, right? They're not saying, oh, this verse is obligated because Muhammad used to do it Maghrib, at twilight, right? But the issue here is Akim as-salat. Okay, so again, Akim is singular, right? Talking to Muhammad, but fine. You want to say it's also for the mu'mins, right? Because if he's doing salah, right, who is he doing it on? The humans we just talked about, from 999 and 103, right? The people. Now, it says here, أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل. You see here, إلى, right? It's the same word used here, إلى. Okay, now if you people who believe it's ritual prayer, if you are being consistent with your reading, you're supposed to start your salah when it's twilight into the night. Okay? This is how it's read. Now, some people say, oh, yeah, we do salah in this time period, but it's just 5 minutes. God doesn't say that. I mean, okay, if you want to play that game, then I can just say, well, Siyam is also 5 minutes. Can I play that game? Because here you guys read it as, oh, you do your Siyam until the Layl, and then you eat and drink until the dawn, right? Until the dawn, you eat and drink, and then when the dawn came, the Fajr, you'd go back to Siyam ila layl until the night, right? So obviously the Siyam is not 5 minutes. It's whatever this the event, the sun from rising until it becomes pitch black, right? So if you are consistent, then it looks like your Salah, your Maghrib Salah is about 45 to 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour, right? It depends on where you are, right? And this is how it should be read. I don't know why they say, oh, see, establish prayer at the decline of the sun until the darkness of the night. So this is the time period where they have to do salah. Now some people say, oh, it's two different prayers. Or God tell us to do it in this specific time, but it's not the whole time period. Again, you're not being consistent with Siyam, right? Why is Siyam the whole time period, but Salah is not? That's questionable. Now, my belief is the Prophet Muhammad was given those set of time to talk to the mu'mins, right? The mu'mins are supposed to go to him, and he goes to them, and he recites the Quran, and once they submit, make sujood, mental submission to the message, they're good, they can go back home. So that's one challenge. I mean, okay, I actually did this. I actually, from twilight to the darkness, I read the Quran. I was doing it for maybe 5-7 days straight, and then because of work and traffic and stuff like that, I wasn't able to do it. But I think the moral of the moral of the story is you set time every day to read the Quran or recite the Quran or turn toward God via the Quran, because that's how God takes you out from the darkness into the light, and you have to maintain that, right? You maintain that. So it doesn't matter if you do it just like the timing given in the Quran, because I don't believe they're not special, right? If I do that an hour and a half at night or in the afternoon or during my lunchtime or whatever, I still get the same benefits. The timing doesn't make it more magical or more whatever, um, more superior or whatever you guys wanna, whatever the word is, the correct word, right? Because you get the benefits either way, right? As long as you're putting time to read the Quran. Now, you know, my second point is those times were given to the mu'mins. Give me a second, I gotta pull the verse out. Now, the time that was given to the mu'mins in Saudi Arabia or in that region, right, was because it's most suitable for them, right? So if you read this chapter here, this verse, it says, Ya ayyuha allazina amanu, right? Tararara, the private time, do not ask, okay, they have to ask permission at the 3 times, right? Let me blow. Okay. 3 مرات من قبل الصلاة 3 مرات من قبل الصلاة الفجر وحين اوكي تضعون ثيابكم okay من الظهر okay, so this is not صلاة الظهر الظهرات okay, وحين تضعون ثيابكم من الظهر. So here God is telling us that those people who lived in the Saudi Arabian region at noon, right, 12 p.m., right, at noon they would take off their clothes. Why? Because it's hot, right? This is when the sun is most high. They go back indoors to their tent and they take off their clothes and they rest, right? And God says this is your private time. So obviously mu'mins around the world don't have at noon, it's not it's not the time they go home and take off their clothes, right? I mean, you can say, well, we're telework and stuff like that, but that's something else. My point is, if the Quran was sent down in Europe or Russia or somewhere where when it's at noon, it's much more pleasant than when it's at night. Because in Russia, if it's night, it's cold. No one wants to freeze, right? Their best time is noon. So I believe that if the Quran was sent down in Russia, God would say, "Oh, Salat al-Zuhr," right? And when you take off your clothes in Isha, so their Isha becomes Zuhr. Why? Because it's the best time they can go out, meet the Prophet, recite the Quran, learn the Quran, and then go back home. In Asia, everyone wants to stay home and be protected, to protect themselves from the weather. Same thing here. The Arabs, they stay at home when it's afternoon because the heat. No one wants to get a heat stroke, right? So God gives them 2 salat, Salat al-Fajr and Salat al-Isha. And I think some might argue for a middle prayer. I'm not sure when is that, but Salat al-Fajr and Salat al-Isha. These are the 2 salah that were given to those specific people at specific time because it suits them. Now, if someone lives in Russia or somewhere else, look, so I repeat, I already said that. The whole point is, I think the moral of the story is, we should recite the Quran at least 2 or 1 hour, or I don't know when, this set of time. You add these two together. For me, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes. Like, let's say it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, right? In the morning, I think from dawn to sunrise, it's about an hour and 10 minutes, and then 45 minutes for Zuluk al-Shams ila al-Layl, right? So, put 2 hours or so to the Quran every day. That's my understanding of these verses, right? And guess what? You're gonna be doing a mental submission and ruku'ah. You're gonna be receptive. You're gonna, you have to allow yourself to be open-minded, or you allow information to come in, right? Now, I think the final refutation against Salah cannot mean turning toward, and it has to mean what do you call a ritual prayer is a washing, right? The wash your hands and your elbows and all that stuff. Now, we have to understand when God says wash, right? In order for you to wash something, it's first has to be dirty, right? Like, no one washes a clean plate, right? No one does that. No one. So, I mean, if you do wash a clean plate, you just got it wet, right? You didn't remove any germs or any dirt from it, right? So here in chapter 5 verse 6, where God says, wash your faces from your forearm to your elbows, it's in the definition that their face and forearms and elbows are dirty, or there's, it's covered in sweat, or I don't know, right? It needs to be clean. If your hands and your elbow and all that stuff is clean, there's no point of washing because you're not removing any dirt, right? Now, some people say, well, it's just spiritual. Like, okay, um, you can't explain that scientifically. Just because God says this, right? It doesn't mean, okay, I'm just gonna hear and obey for no reason, okay? And again, there is a reason for chapter 5 verse 6. The reason is you are dirty, right? You wash a dirty plate. You don't wash a clean plate. You just get it wet, right? And you put some soap and you wash it away. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't count as washing, right? So the definition of to wash something is to make it clean, right? So for me, in this verse, God is talking about hygiene, right? And just look at any articles on taking a shower or washing your face when it's dirty or washing your body when it's dirty. Just look up any article and it will show you the psychological effect it has when, we had a long day and we're out, we're all sweaty and dirty and smelly, and we take a shower. There is a psychological effect behind it. And I think, like, you just Google it, the psychological effect of taking a shower, right? It does do something to our brain. Okay, so right, so I think I covered everything that needed to be said. Why, Salah means to turn toward, and usually the refutation that are brought up to say, no, Salah doesn't mean to turn toward. It's physical. It's a ritual. Uh, I think I did my very best to explain why. And I know the wudu verse, right? That's a lot of people say, well, it must be physical. That's it, right? Another thing that I get a lot is like, okay, if Salah means to turn toward God, everything you do is, if you do everything in the name of God, that means before you do anything, right, you have to do wudu. No, it does not say that. Okay, again, it says to wash, right? So in order for you to wash something, it has to be dirty. So if let's say I wake up, it was a hot day, I wake up sweaty and all that stuff, I take a shower, right? And then I'm starting my salah. I'm turning toward God, whether I'm reciting the Quran or being or doing all the good stuff. Like, okay, in um, chapter 11 verse 87, for example, the following the commands of God is also salah, right? Because here it says, O my people, give full measurement and weight in justice, and do not deprive the people of their due, and do not commit abuse on earth, spreading corruption, right? What remains from God is best for you, if you would be believers, but I am not a guardian over you. Interesting. And then they said, O Shaib, does your salawatak, right? Here it's salawatak. It's salawatak. Now, according to the context, right? What was his salawat? That's a really easy question to answer, and that is the verses I just recited to you guys. Like, give full measure, weight in justice. All these stuff are salawat. Reciting the Quran is also, uh, part of the salawat, right? So a salawat is more like, if I made a category of what is salat, and it'll be like Quran recitation, upholding justice, waiting, not messing around with the balance, right? Don't spread corruption on earth. All those commands in the Quran, right? Now, I don't need to make a wudu every time uh, I uphold a command, right? I only need to do a wudu once I am dirty, right? By the definition of washing, right? So if I, you know, got dirty or broke the wudu, then yes, I should wash. But so I mean, and many Sunnis also, like, they would make their wudu on Maghrib, right? the Maghrib prayer, and they're still good until Isha. They don't break it, so they just do the Isha prayer, right? They don't need to make wudu before every other prayer, right? Because and that makes sense. Like the only time it's broken, God gives when prayer is broken, and one of them is not sleeping. So if you slept for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 2 hours, or 8 hours, and you wake up and you're still clean, you don't need to do wudu. It's not a necessity. It's only necessary when you are unclean. What else do we get? I think I covered everything. And now, for people who believe Salah is a ritual prayer, you just have to have an open mind. Okay, just for a second, just step back and assume you don't know anything. Take all the verses in the Quran that has the word Salah, right? And find a definition that is consistent throughout. You can't just say it's a ritual prayer, and in other verses, you change it to invocation, blessings, and I don't know what else they change it to. We just cannot do that, okay? Like, I think that's it's not fair. That being said, I think I'll leave you guys here. If you guys have any questions or refutation, please bring it up. Um, and thank you for listening. I'll make more videos. Just took some time off because of work and stuff. But inshallah, my next video will be about zakat. What is zakat? And I have like a very interesting definition of that, and hopefully it will be short, right? It won't be like a 40-minute video. I know I make long videos, but I will try to make shorter videos, and instead of, and maybe every now and then we'll make a video about the refutation regarding Salah being turning toward. If something comes up or any question was being asked and needs to be, presented. But yeah, al-Salah is not something specific, right? Defined. It's not, because if you're gonna go there, you're gonna have a problem with al-Bahr, al-Tifl, al-Hadid, al-Kitab, all those alif lam singular followed by a singular word, you're not gonna find, it's not gonna be specific. You're gonna struggle. Though those people will struggle defining those. All right. Thank you very much, and have a blessed day, evening, morning. Peace.